July 1987, desert sun scorching down on Prescott Valley, Arizona. The three triplet brothers of the Markham family, Lucas, Daniel and Peter, were riding their bikes around the backyard as usual, their laughter echoing under the bright sky. Just a few hours later, the yard was empty, bikes toppled over, back gate wide open. From then on, no one saw them again. The disappearance of the three children shocked the small desert community, but time dusted over everything, the files, the pain, and even the memories of the single mother who still waited for her sons every afternoon. Police investigated for many years, hundreds of leads pursued, none leading to results. The case gradually went cold, leaving only rumors about a dark red Cadillac, about the man who once taught the three children in elementary school, about the South Field, where everyone avoided passing after dusk. 36 years later, when sonar lights shone down into the old lake bed, a car emerged from the muddy bottom, like the arm of the past reaching out from the dust. Inside, police found traces no one wanted to see: scraps of green plaid fabric, yellow shirt buttons, and small children's arm bones. From that moment, the forgotten disappearance turned into a months-long earthquake, cracking the image of the kind teacher that the entire community had revered. But that was just the beginning. As DNA technology began to speak, another secret, buried deep for 37 years, gradually surfaced with the desert mud. This is the story of a crime disguised as kindness, of a determined female investigator who wouldn't let go, and of justice, delayed, but never disappearing in the heart of America. Before diving deep into this shocking true story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love these journeys to uncover forgotten justice, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Afternoon in the Prescott Valley suburbs, summer sun stretching long over the dry golden ground, casting glaring streaks of light through the kitchen window. In the backyard grass, the three Markham triplet brothers, Luke, Noah, and Gabriel, were playing tag, their laughter echoing in the quiet space of the small neighborhood. Their mother, Evie Markham, stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, occasionally tilting her head to listen to the kids calling out to each other, the peaceful feeling of a familiar afternoon. The neighbors across the street were washing their car, the radio playing local news about the upcoming heat wave. The smell of dry grass and BBQ smoke from the next yard wafted over, mingling with the onion and garlic in the kitchen. Evie looked up out the window, seeing the small shadows running back and forth, green plaid shirts standing out against the sunlight, their bikes propped against the wooden fence. Time passed slowly, the sun sinking lower, the light turning to copper. A gust of wind blew through, carrying fine dust hovering over the dirt road. Evie bent down to grab a plate, and when she looked up, the laughter suddenly stopped. Only the sound of the fan and crickets in the bushes remained. She frowned, stepped out onto the porch, and called out each child's name loudly. No response. The backyard was empty, the fence shadows stretching like black streaks on the grass. On the ground, three bikes lay toppled, wheels still spinning lightly in the wind. A red plastic ball lay against the fence, sand marks etching half a circle. The back gate was ajar, its old hinges creaking. Evie circled the house, calling everywhere, ran out to the dirt road behind, where the small path connected to Lynx Lake. She looked down the gentle slope, seeing only hazy dust and a few small tire tracks mixed into old cattle footprints. No sounds, no figures. The silence was so profound that Evie could hear her own heart beat, each erratic thump. A flash of fear rose, but she tried to calm herself, returned to the yard, checked the garage, living room, bathroom, then stepped back onto the porch and called again. No answer. The dining table was still intact as it had been minutes before: 3 plates, 3 glasses of lemonade, still beaded with cold condensation, the kitchen light casting down an unusually chilly glow. Evie placed her hand on the table edge, feeling the wood tremble slightly under her fingers. She took a deep breath, staring at the open gate, a simple empty space that suddenly became the most terrifying thing in her life. She rushed into the house, picked up the landline receiver, her knuckles stiff, her voice hoarse as she called the local police station, trying to stay calm to state her name, address, and the short sentence, her 3 sons had just vanished. After that, she stood silent in the kitchen, the only sounds left being the whir of the fan and the faint vibration of the phone cord in her hand. The sound of police sirens pierced the quiet neighborhood. The red and blue lights of the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office flashed on the low walls and dry bushes, making the Markham yard look unfamiliar and cold. The first patrol car pulled up to the gate, Deputy Frank Ramirez stepping out, quickly noting Evie Markham's report. Her voice broke, hands trembling, eyes still fixed on the backyard, as if waiting for the kids to run back. Ramirez shone his flashlight over the yard. 3 small bikes lay toppled, wheels still dusted with fresh dirt, the back gate ajar, hinges clacking in the wind. No skid marks or adult footprints, just overlapping children's prints, leading to the gate and vanishing on the dirt road behind. He numbered, photographed, and marked each item's position: bikes, ball, lone shoe. On the wooden porch table, 3 glasses of lemonade still held cold beads on the rims. 2 more police cars arrived. 1 team cordoned off the area, the other canvassed neighboring houses. From nearby homes, residents began stepping out, flashlights, sweeping fences, voices murmuring with worry and fear. Prescott Valley was usually quiet, rare in crime. The near-simultaneous disappearance of 3 kids shook everyone. Evie was asked to sit in the living room, a young female officer comforting her, taking the initial statement. She recounted the normal afternoon, then the sudden silence of laughter. Every detail was recorded meticulously. When asked if any strangers or unfamiliar vehicles had been around the neighborhood lately, she shook her head. No, just the kids playing in the yard. Outside the window, police lights flashed relentlessly, reflecting on the thin curtains like shifting shadows. In the yard, the local forensics team set up floodlights illuminating the garden. They collected soil samples, took photos, used yellow tape to mark the scene perimeter. Ramirez radioed in, requesting a 1-mile search radius around the house, alerting patrols near Lynx Lake to watch for suspicious vehicles. A search and rescue unit was called in to bring scent dogs using the boys' clothing smells. The neighbors next door, the Collins couple, said around 6 p.m. they still heard laughter, then dog barking, and a vehicle passing on the dirt road. They didn't see the car clearly, just remembered the loud engine and dark body color. Ramirez noted the statement and forwarded it to dispatch. By 8 p.m., Lieutenant Charles Dalton, head of the Rapid Response Team, arrived. He surveyed the scene, exchanged brief words with Ramirez, then called dispatch. 3 kids missing at once, no signs of struggle, not like they wandered off. The case was classified as missing persons, unusual circumstances, officially opening the file. Evie sat silent on the sofa, hands covering her face. Police collected the boys' clothes for the search, each item carefully folded into nylon bags. In the dim yellow light, the house looked empty, toys scattered like evidence of a life abruptly cut short. Outside, Dalton directed search teams to fan out, 1 toward Lynx Lake, 1 along the dirt road to the highway. Flashlights swept through the sand, radio static mixing with dry wind. Police set up checkpoints, inspecting every vehicle in a 2-mile radius. Ramirez continued finalizing the scene report. No signs of entry, no specific evidence, situation undetermined. Around 9:30, the neighborhood was immersed in the flickering blue and red lights of police cars. A few neighbors still gathered, but no one dared speak loudly. Evie was advised to stay inside, awaiting updates. As Ramirez stepped out, looking back at the house and the flashing lights, he felt the strange silence enveloping the whole neighborhood, a heavy, thick silence, as if the night air itself was holding back answers no one wanted to hear. As night fell, large floodlights set up around the Markham house, turned the backyard into a cold, bright patch amid the suburban darkness of Prescott Valley. The crackle of radios, dog barks, and footsteps on gravel echoed through the neighborhood. The rescue team coordinated with local police to search along the row of houses behind, expanding toward Lynx Lake. Desert wind blew harshly dry, the smell of dust and engine oil mixing in the air, light slowly sweeping low bushes, every inch of ground, every dry ditch. Deputy Frank Ramirez led the main search group, holding a high-powered flashlight. He checked every fence edge, every tree trunk, calling the kids' names in vain. Scent dogs were released, tracking smells from the 3 Markham boys' clothes. At first, the dogs circled the yard, barking softly a few times, then suddenly headed toward the wooden fence back. Ramirez instinctively shone the light down. The beam stopped on a small detail, a scrap of green checkered fabric, flipped by the wind, caught on a sharp wooden slat. He gloved up, carefully removed it, and bagged it in evidence. The fabric sample was rushed to the forensics team, waiting by the van. Minutes later, a tech called back, "Tire tracks." Ramirez hurried over. Under the floodlights, clear wide tire marks from a broad axle vehicle, etched deep into the dry soil. The tracks ran parallel to the back fence, then veered onto the small dirt road, leading to the lake. No sudden brake marks, just smooth even lines, as if the vehicle had turned very slowly. Ramirez measured the distance between the tracks, noting it, enough to identify a large sedan, not a truck or SUV. Police staked markers, photographed the full scene. In the dim light, floating dust fibers made the space feel heavier. Evie Markham was taken temporarily to the neighbors to rest, but she still wouldn't take her eyes off the yard. Every siren or engine noise made her jump up, hoping for news. The father, Robert Markham, just back from his night shift, was stunned seeing the flashing lights around the house. He rushed over, questions tumbling out, then went silent as Ramirez recounted. Around 10:30, Lieutenant Dalton directed expanding the search radius to 3 miles. 2 teams fanned out, one along the trail to Lynx Lake, one toward Highway 69. Overhead, the rescue helicopter's spotlight swept the lake shore, white beam cutting through shimmering water mist. Divers from the Prescott Rescue Unit arrived with sonar for submerged objects. The lake surfaced dark and still, ripples reflecting lights like shattered silver streaks. As sonar activated, the screen showed odd bright patches on the bottom, but the tech confirmed only rocks and rotten branches. No signs of vehicles or large objects. Temperature dropped fast, mist rising from the surface, limiting visibility. Dalton halted diving temporarily, marked the area, and planned to return at dawn. On shore, Ramirez reviewed his notebook notes: fabric scrap, tire tracks, direction of movement, witness timeline of engine noise. He looked up at the sky, a thin crescent moon hanging amid sparse clouds, faint light casting on the empty dirt lot. No laughter, no wind, only distant helicopter thrum and radio static signaling shift changes. He wrote the final line: no suspicious objects detected. Samples and scene photos forwarded to forensics. Near midnight, the search teams returned. Desert wind grew colder. A few residents still stood at the gate, silently watching police pack equipment. Evie sat on the steps, hands clasped tightly, empty gaze toward the dark beyond the yard. No one dared approach. All comfort now felt meaningless. Dalton stepped over, murmuring to Ramirez, "No signs of voluntary departure. 3 kids can't vanish together without a trace. Someone took them." Ramirez nodded, looking back at the empty yard. The 3 toppled bikes, still there like 3 silent witnesses. He added a line to the report: possible abduction, expand search radius. The short words cold and stark, marking the official shift of the case, from a strange disappearance to a full criminal investigation. As the clock ticked past midnight, the last police convoy left the neighborhood. Flashing lights faded down the slope, leaving the Markham house in darkness and silence. In the distance, Lynx Lake lay flat and still, not a ripple, as if hiding something deep under its thick black water. Dawn broke slowly over the Prescott Valley hills, casting a hazy gray light down on the Markham neighborhood after a sleepless night. A thin mist clung to fences and dry lawns. The sounds of police cars and radios crackled along the dirt road, shattering the silence. At the end of the street, white tents were set up as a temporary command center. Inside, maps lay spread out, pinned with red tacks and strings connecting search points. Lieutenant Charles Dalton, the lead commander, stepped out of his car, coffee cup in hand, eyes shadowed from an all-nighter. Deputy Frank Ramirez handed over the report. The blue plaid fabric scrap had been sent for testing. Tire tracks matched a large sedan. The tracking dog lost the scent at the back fence. Dalton eyed the map, his voice low. "We expand the search, focus toward Lynx Lake." When the survey team reached the lake, the water lay flat as a mirror, reflecting the first rays of sunlight. A light breeze stirred tiny ripples. The forensic technician crouched by the shore, pointing to large tire tracks sliding long down to the water's edge. The treads dug deep at the start, fading as they reversed, indicating the vehicle had driven down, stopped, then backed out. Ramirez quickly measured the distance between the tracks, concluding they matched the ones in the Markham backyard exactly. Same vehicle type at both scenes, same direction of movement. Dalton jotted a note, possible same vehicle. Around the lake's shore, rescue personnel combed further, finding no large objects. A local fisherman who lived nearby said that the previous afternoon, around 6 o'clock, he'd seen a dark red car parked near this spot, thought it was a walker, and didn't pay attention. When he looked back, the car was gone. He vaguely recalled two figures in the car, one large, one small. The information matched the time frame when Evie heard the children's laughter suddenly stop. In the neighborhood, word of the disappearance spread fast. Dozens of volunteers arrived to help. Residents printed flyers, posting photos of the three kids around the post office, gas station, small supermarket. The local church opened all day for people to pray. In front of the Markham house gate, flowers and teddy bears began piling up. Evie Markham sat in the living room, staring out the window at the street, saying nothing. Robert Markham returned from his shift, face ashen, eyes ringed from exhaustion. In the command tent, Dalton and Ramirez cross-checked witness statements, plotting timelines on the map. They identified a possible route from the Markham house to Lynx Lake, then out to Highway 69. Dalton requested checks on gas stations, stores and traffic cameras in the area, though he knew in 1987, most used fuzzy VHS tapes, hard to extract from. "Even if it's just a shadow of the car, we need it," he said. That noon, local station reporters arrived at the scene. They broadcast live right at the street's end, backdrop of yellow caution tape and the silent small house. The announcer's voice rang out, "3 7-year-old triplets vanished yesterday afternoon in Prescott Valley. Police are not ruling out kidnapping." Images of the 3 bikes lying tipped over and the gate ajar quickly appeared on the noon news. The press applied pressure, but Dalton stayed silent. He knew one wrong detail could derail the investigation. Meanwhile, the forensics team reported mud samples from the lake's edge contained rubber traces and red fabric fibers, possibly from a dark-painted vehicle. Not enough to conclude, but confirming the tire tracks were real. Early afternoon, an internal briefing took place in the command tent. Dalton presented the summary. 2 scenes, the backyard and lake edge, have matching tire tracks. Suspect vehicle, dark red large sedan, possibly Cadillac DeVille. License plate, unidentified. We upgrade the file from missing persons to kidnapping under investigation, suspected abduction in progress. He signed the order to send to the Arizona Department of Public Safety, AZDPS, for coordinated investigation. Outside, temperatures rose quickly. The rescue team continued searching the lakeside woods, raking through every bush, every rock crevice. They found a few small glass shards, possibly from taillights, but origin unclear. All were bagged and sealed. Overhead, the rescue helicopter swept slowly, its beam reflecting off the water, making everything gleam like a layer of silver. Late afternoon, the news spread statewide. Major networks from Phoenix sent crews. Broadcast vans lined the road, reporters jostling for info. Dalton refused detailed answers, saying only briefly, "We're doing everything we can." In the sunset glow, the Markham neighborhood lit up in the blue-red flash of police lights, interspersed with desert wind sweeping through, carrying dust and gasoline smells. As night fell, Ramirez looked back at the Markham yard. Everything remained just as it was the night before: the 3 bikes, the fence, the open gate. He quietly entered the final line in his notebook. Witness confirms dark red vehicle appeared near Lynx Lake on day of disappearance. Investigation scope expands to entire Prescott Valley area. He closed the notebook, lifted his head to the sky, where the day's faint light was fading. In that moment, he felt as if something heavy hung suspended in the air, a case just officially begun, and they had only scratched its surface. 2 days after the disappearance, the temporary command center at the end of Markham Street still burned bright. The press overflowed with news of the Prescott Valley triplets case, but police still had no clear leads. Only one solid clue remained valuable: the dark red car that appeared near Lynx Lake on the afternoon of the incident. At the Yavapai County Forensics Lab, the analysis results were released. Tire tracks collected from the backyard and lake edge matched the tires of a late 1970s Cadillac DeVille, a large sedan common in Arizona at the time. The width and tread pattern confirmed it was the same type of vehicle. This finding narrowed the investigation to a few hundred cars statewide. Reviewing the initial records, Ramirez spotted a small but serious error. The license plate noted in the first night's report had a mistyped character. The data line showed 4KZ813 instead of 4KZ913. The typing mistake caused the lookup system to return no matches. He circled the number in red, passing it to Lieutenant Dalton. "One wrong character threw the whole lead off," Ramirez said. Dalton nodded. "Fix it. Recheck the entire DMV file." At noon, a new witness appeared at the police station. He was a park maintenance worker near Lynx Lake. On the day of the disappearance, he'd seen a middle-aged man in a white shirt standing by a red car parked near the water's edge. "I thought he was fishing," the man recounted, "but when I looked back a few minutes later, the car was gone." He vaguely recalled the plate starting with 4KZ and the car being an old-style, long body, dark red paint. The statement matched the forensics results almost perfectly. Dalton immediately issued a statewide bolo. The brief message went out via police networks and radio stations. Dark red Cadillac DeVille, late 1970s production, plate starting 4KZ, suspected in Prescott Valley disappearance. Within 24 hours, hundreds of reports flooded in, but none matched fully. Many vehicles were scrapped or sold out of state, some repainted, others with old plates removed. Each tip was checked and ruled out. Ramirez stood in the command tent, staring at the map covered in red pins, feeling like he was chasing a ghost. That evening, he returned to the edge of Lynx Lake, where the tire tracks still faintly marked the hard ground. The wind blew strong, carrying the lake's scent, mixed with rust. He tried to picture it: the Cadillac stopping, someone stepping out, then turning around and leaving. The 3 kids vanished the same day. Were they in the car? The question looped endlessly in his mind. Meanwhile, Dalton cross-checked the full DMV data. After fixing the plate error, the computer screen flashed with a single matching result: owner Howard E. Fenton. Registration year 1978. Color, burgundy red. Status, active. Address Cottonwood, Arizona. Fenton, a retired high school teacher a few years out, was listed as the legal owner of the Cadillac, matching the witness description. When the info was read aloud in the command tent, no one spoke. Dalton looked at Ramirez, saying curtly, "Get his file here. We've just found the man with that car." News of the new break leaked out just hours later. Major papers ran headlines. Police track mysterious red car, search expands across Arizona. In front of the Markham house, residents gathered, praying. Evie Markham said nothing, just sat silently watching the police cars stream out of the neighborhood in a line. Night fell, desert wind rattling the caution tape around the house. In the command tent, Dalton stood before the map, marking a blue dot at Cottonwood's location. "If Fenton still has this car," he said, "the answers might be right there." Ramirez closed his notebook, gazing out into the darkness where headlights swept over the still sand. He knew the investigation had just entered a new phase, and the name Howard Fenton might be the key to unlocking the whole mystery. 2 days after police identified the Cadillac's owner as Howard Fenton, he unexpectedly showed up at the search area around Lynx Lake. Fenton introduced himself as a science teacher at Pioneer Elementary, where the Markham triplets had attended. He spoke in a calm voice. "I taught the boys last year. When I heard the news, I couldn't just sit still." The simple statement made Lieutenant Dalton and Deputy Ramirez glance at each other, since the name had just appeared in that morning's report. Fenton's Cadillac was parked right near the command tent area. The dark red paint had faded, but the shape still matched the large sedan witnesses described. Ramirez circled it, noting the plate, quick checking. It matched the file numbers exactly. He kept his composure, shaking Fenton's hand, inviting him to join the volunteer group. While Fenton filled out forms, Ramirez discreetly signaled a young officer to photograph the car and report back to headquarters. Fenton blended seamlessly into the crowd. He brought water, helped organize supplies, guided residents in marking searched areas. A few parents recognized him, saying he'd taught their kids, that he was dedicated, mild-mannered. Dalton watched from afar, noting every gesture composed proper, sometimes a bit too polished. As the afternoon sun faded, Ramirez approached for a chat. "You live in Cottonwood?" "Yes, I've taught there over 10 years. Where were you on the evening of June 17th? Fenton replied quickly, "At the school, tutoring a student, Eddie Harlow." The answer was noted, matching the disappearance timeline. When asked about the Cadillac, he smiled. "My father's car. I keep it for memories. Still runs well, but I rarely drive it." Ramirez did a preliminary check inside. Old leather seats, dusty carpet, empty trunk. Under the seat was a gas receipt dated June 18th, the day after the disappearance. Fenton explained, "I heard on the radio, drove straight to Prescott to help. Everything checked out logically, no grounds to hold the car or man. When the forensics team verified the student, Eddie Harlow, they found the boy had moved out of state 2 weeks prior." Ramirez paused silently for seconds before reporting back to Dalton. "His alibi's unconfirmed." Dalton frowned, voice low. "We have no evidence, no search warrant, just surveil." Late afternoon, Fenton stayed to help clean up, chatting with local reporters. He spoke briefly on camera, "I just want to help." Then he drove off in the Cadillac. The engine hummed with a strange smoothness, deep and steady, leaving a small dust trail on the dirt road. Ramirez watched him go, unease clinging. In his mind echoed one thought: this man had arrived too perfectly timed, too willing, and too clean. That night, Ramirez returned to the command center. He opened the file on the desk. Howard E. Fenton, 48 years old, science teacher, Cottonwood, Arizona, dark red Cadillac DeVille, plate 4 KZ 913. Under the notes section, Ramirez added a short line, "Appeared at scene. Volunteered assistance, alibi unverified." He sat quietly for minutes, then closed the file. The next morning, local press aired a new bulletin: former teacher of missing triplets joined search. Fenton's image appeared on screen, tall figure, bright eyes, standing by the lake, the red Cadillac, faintly visible behind. On TV, he spoke in a sad voice, "We have to keep looking. Don't give up hope." The news spread fast, prompting community praise for his kindness. In the command tent, Ramirez watched the clip on the screen, his face darkening. He didn't believe in coincidence. "What do you think?" Dalton asked. Ramirez replied softly, "If he's truly innocent, why show up right when the car's being hunted, and why can't he prove his alibi?" Dalton didn't answer, just said, "We'll know soon enough." Before leaving the tent, Ramirez added one more line to his notebook, "Howard Fenton, vehicle matches description, alibi unverified, secret surveillance." A short dry line, but for Ramirez, it marked the start of a simmering suspicion, one that would steer the case in an entirely different direction. 3 days after leaving the search area, Howard Fenton proactively contacted the police. He called Deputy Ramirez, speaking in a calm voice. "I know you still have suspicions. I want to clear everything up. I have a witness who can confirm my alibi for the evening of June 17th. The call was recorded and forwarded to Lieutenant Dalton, who immediately requested that Fenton present himself at the command center. That afternoon, Fenton appeared, bringing a piece of paper with the name and address of his acquaintance, Margaret Harlow, the mother of the boy he said he had tutored. "That evening, I was at her house," he asserted. "She can confirm it. I helped her fix a leaky water pipe, and after finishing, I stayed for dinner." Dalton reviewed the information, then nodded to allow verification. On the paper, the address was a small house in the southern suburbs of Cottonwood, not far from Pioneer School. The next day, Ramirez drove to the provided address. The road leading to the area was quiet, flanked by abandoned houses, interspersed with a few still occupied. The house number on the paper, 212, stood alone at the end of the road, the front door locked with a rusty chain, weeds growing tall nearly to the windows. He knocked on the door, called out a few times, but no one answered. An elderly neighbor passing by, when asked about the homeowner, just shook her head. "That place has been empty for over half a year. The Harlow family used to live there, but they moved out in May." Ramirez fell silent, took notes, and snapped a few photos. Back at the station, he prepared a detailed report, witness address for alibi confirmation unoccupied, unable to verify existence of Margaret Harlow. The report was sent directly to Lieutenant Dalton and the county command office. Dalton read it carefully, tapping the end of his pen on the desk. "He's lying," he concluded. "If the address is real, why has no one lived there for months?" Ramirez agreed, but per procedure, they needed more evidence before requesting a warrant to search Fenton's car or home. The very next day, Ramirez drafted a proposal file, requesting court approval to inspect the Cadillac DeVille and Fenton's residence, citing the unverified alibi. The file was sent to the Yavapai County Chief Investigator. However, the response returned only a short line, "Insufficient grounds. Not approved." Dalton read the document, threw his pen down on the desk in frustration. "The higher-ups are afraid of public opinion," he said. "They don't want to turn a volunteer teacher into a suspect without direct evidence." Ramirez just stayed silent, but his eyes were heavy. The two continued to monitor Fenton. He returned to Pioneer School, teaching as usual, participating in community activities, and sometimes even sending encouraging letters to the Markham family. In the public's eyes, he was a good man. But in the police file, next to his name, the word "suspicious alibi" remained marked in red. 3 days later, when Ramirez checked the electronic files again to supplement his report, he realized Fenton's statement, and the witness address sheet had disappeared from the system. The table of contents was still there, but the file was empty. He requested the technician to retrieve the backup, but nothing was found. "Someone might have deleted it with admin privileges," the technician said quietly. Ramirez immediately reported to Dalton. The two checked the printed copy in the original file. It had also vanished. The file folder was kept in a locked cabinet, accessible by only 3 people. Dalton looked at Ramirez, his voice lowering. "Someone doesn't want us touching Fenton." He suggested launching an internal review, but the county oversight office refused, citing lack of evidence of tampering. The matter was ordered paused until new evidence emerged. Ramirez objected, but the order had been issued. The surveillance on Fenton was canceled, and all related documents transferred to temporary archive status. That evening, Ramirez drove back to Prescott Valley, stopping in front of the Markham house. The gate still hung with a yellow ribbon, wilted flowers around the steps. Light from the neighbor's house spilled over, illuminating the dusty bicycles still kept untouched in the garage. Evie Markham wouldn't let anyone touch them. He stood silently for a long time, feeling more defeated than ever. The next day, the case was officially suspended. The final report stated briefly, "No new evidence. Markham case transferred to cold case pending review status." The command center doors closed, the white tents dismantled. The media gradually withdrew, the Markham neighborhood, returning to its previous quiet, only different in that the laughter of 3 children was gone. In the empty office, Ramirez sat alone, opening his notebook again. The line he had written a few days earlier was still there. "Howard Fenton, vehicle matches description, alibi unverified, secret surveillance." He stared at that line, and then drew an underline at the end. Surveillance halted. He closed the notebook, knowing the case had fallen into oblivion. But in his heart, the feeling about Fenton, the gentle teacher with the slow smile, remained like a thorn that couldn't be pulled out. Ramirez understood that sometimes evil doesn't hide in the shadows, but right in the light, where everyone believes they're seeing a good person. In 1988, nearly a year after the 3 Markham siblings disappeared, the Yavapai County office issued an official notice. The case was closed and transferred to storage at the Arizona Department of Public Safety DPS archives. The documents were bound into 3 thick volumes, labeled Case #87 MK421, Missing Minors, Prescott Valley. In the final summary report, the cold line read, "No new evidence, no suspect identified." That morning, Deputy Frank Ramirez stood watching the administrative clerk affix the sealing sticker to the file cover. A year of non-stop work, hundreds of hours of searching, and in the end, only yellowed sheets of paper remained. On the table, a cardboard box held a few pieces of evidence, a piece of green checkered fabric, a strand of blonde hair caked in mud, and 3 black and white photos of the red car far from the lake shore. Ramirez lightly touched the evidence bag, as if trying to hold on to something. "We never even checked that Cadillac," he said softly, but no one responded. The order had been signed, the case was closed. The red car, the only lead that had ever made him believe they could find the truth, now just a line in the suspect vehicle, unverified section. Howard Fenton continued teaching in Cottonwood, occasionally writing articles for the local education magazine. The press stopped mentioning the disappearance, leaving only a few old articles in the archives. The Markham family left Prescott Valley in 1990, the small house sold to an elderly couple, the backyard planted with a row of trees to cover the patch of ground that had once been the scene. In the DPS storage warehouse in Phoenix, files like the Markham case stacked high on hundreds of steel shelves. Each year, administrative staff updated the lists, renumbered them, and affixed cold case, inactive labels. In the western corner of the storage area, a group of police academy interns was assigned to reorganize old files. Among them was a young woman, with brown hair, sharp eyes, and meticulous in every movement. Maria Lopez, a senior student at the Arizona Police Academy. Lopez was tasked with overseeing the child disappearance files from 1985, 1988. When she opened the Markham case volume, she paused longer than with the others. On the cover was a faint handprint from a previous handler, and a red ink note, "Case inactive, insufficient evidence." Inside, she read every page, scene logs, witness statements, forensic reports, and even Ramirez's note on the last page. Suspect possibility, driver of red Cadillac DeVille, unchecked. Lopez frowned slightly, flipping through the evidence section. There was a photo of the car from afar, long body, flat roof, license plate unclear. She murmured, Cadillac DeVille, never searched. On her table were dozens of other files, but the Markham case made her stop. Lopez took a pencil and wrote a short line in the corner of the cover. As a habit for reminders, the Cadillac was never checked. When her supervisor passed by, she asked, if evidence hasn't been fully analyzed, can we request a review? The man gave a wry smile. This one's been closed for nearly a year, Lopez. No one wants to reopen a case with no bodies, and no suspect. The answer silenced her, but her eyes still lingered on the photo of the red car. That afternoon, in the quiet storage room, Lopez quietly refiled the Markham volume on shelf 3, row H. As she slid the iron drawer shut, she glanced at the file label one more time. The words "missing minors" peeked out from behind the foggy plastic. She didn't know that decades later, her own hand would be the one to pull this file from the shelf again. Meanwhile, in Cottonwood, Howard Fenton lived peacefully. He retired from teaching after a few years, opened a private tutoring center, then faded from the news. No one remembered the deep red Cadillac that had once been the focus of the investigation. Ramirez transferred to Tucson, finally retiring in 1995. In the old notebook he still kept, the last page had only one line: Fenton, unverified alibi. Time passed, Prescott Valley changed. The dirt road from back then was paved, the Markham neighborhood now dotted with new apartments. Locals only mentioned the disappearance as an old story, half true, half fiction. Kids growing up later called the place the silent block, the silent neighborhood. 3 decades passed. The Markham file lay dormant in cold storage. The green checkered fabric faded, the red car photos yellowed, the sample hairs in glass tubes, covered in a thin layer of dust. No one opened that file, no one mentioned the 3 children's names anymore. Until 2024, when an old letter arrived at the DPS cold case office. The cover with number 87, MK421, was finally pulled from the shelf, and the small line Lopez had written in 1988, faded with time, was still legible under the cold light. The Cadillac was never checked. 36 years had passed. Prescott Valley was now a developed town, the old dirt roads paved, the Markham neighborhood left with only a few old houses. In a small apartment in Flagstaff, Evie Markham, now in her 60s, still kept the habit each spring of sorting through the boxes of mementos from her 3 sons. When she opened an old box, she found a yellow envelope printed with Kodak 35mm film logo, handwritten words faded, June 1987, family. Inside were a few partially exposed rolls of film. Evie took them to the old photo shop in town, where the developer said the film could still be salvaged. 2 days later, she returned to pick them up. In the stack of yellowish developed prints were the final moments of an ordinary day. The 3 children in green checkered shirts, smiling brightly in the yard, sunlight filtering through the fence. But in the last photo, the corner showed the nose of a deep red car, parked right on the roadside behind. The light reflected just enough to recognize the vintage sedan shape, long body, identical to the car the police had described in 1987. Her heart pounding, Evie stared at the photo for a long time before packing it back in a new envelope. She wrote a short letter accompanying it to the cold case unit, Arizona Department of Public Safety DPS in Phoenix, the office handling unsolved cases. The letter was concise. I think there's something in this photo. Please review it. 3 days later, the envelope was placed on the desk of Detective Maria Lopez, who was on morning shift. She read the case name on the envelope, Markham Case, 1987, and froze. It was she, 36 years ago, who as an intern had written the note in the old file. The Cadillac was never checked. Lopez carefully opened the envelope. In her hand was the old yellowed photo, the corner blurry but clear enough to see the red car parked in the distance. She scanned and enlarged it, comparing to the 1987 file photos. A match. Her heart tightened slightly. From memory, images resurfaced, the young mother from back then, the police lights, and the case hastily closed. She reopened the electronic file hash, 87, MK421. Lines of data appeared on the screen, old scans, faded and scratched. Lopez checked the license plate in the old report, 4KZ813. She entered it into the DPS vehicle system. No matching vehicle found. A hunch struck. Lopez tried changing the last character, 4KZ913. This time, the screen lit up. Cadillac DeVille, burgundy red color, owner, Howard E. Fenton. She stared at the result. Just one typing error in the original report had sent the entire case astray for 3 decades. Lopez printed the confirmation, clipped it with the Kodak photo, and sent it immediately to her superior, Supervisor Grant Holloway, head of the cold case unit. He reviewed it quickly, nodded. Enough basis to reopen the investigation. Make this official. That afternoon, the internal memo was signed. Case hash 87, MK421 reactivated. Lead investigator, Detective Maria Lopez. The Markham file was removed from storage and brought to the Phoenix Forensics Lab. The fabric scrap, hair strand, and old photos were re-examined with next-generation DNA technology. The preliminary forensics report indicated the samples were still viable for analysis. The cold case unit officially relaunched the case after 36 years of neglect. That evening, Lopez sat alone in her office. On the desk was a large print, the 3 children smiling brightly in the sun, and in the far corner, the deep red car, a small detail once overlooked. She thought of Frank Ramirez, the deputy from back then, who had written the last line in his notebook, "Surveillance halted." If he were still alive, he might smile seeing the file reopened. She turned on the desk lamp, writing the first line in her new investigation notebook. Target, trace the red Cadillac, owner Howard E. Fenton. Outside, wind blew strongly through the glass buildings of Phoenix. In the small room, the document scanner hummed steadily. Old file pages were digitized one by one, faded lines restored. 36 years later, the name Markham appeared again on the active investigation list, and the hand signing at the bottom was none other than the intern from back then, who had written the small note. The Cadillac was never checked. Right after the Markham case was reactivated, Detective Maria Lopez spent the entire morning in the DPS data room tracing vehicle registration information. The Arizona DMV system stored millions of records, but it only took a few minutes for her to find the target. Cadillac DeVille burgundy red, registered to Howard E. Fenton, 1978 model year status, not reported scrapped, not transferred. A small note appeared at the bottom, no emissions update since 2005. Lopez leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. Fenton, once an elementary school teacher in Cottonwood, was now missing from standard resident records. She opened advanced retrieval. According to tax data, he was running a nonprofit organization called Haven Ranch for Youth on the outskirts of Tucson, about 200 miles south of Prescott Valley. Legal records described it as a rehabilitation and education center for troubled teens. The Haven Ranch website featured a few photos of kids riding horses, grassland scenes, and the slogan, "Where every child finds a new beginning." Lopez tilted her head, recalling the notes from the old file. Fenton had once been suspected as the last person seen near the scene. She didn't believe his current operation of a helping kids center was just a coincidence. A quick report was sent to Supervisor Holloway. He skimmed it, nodded. Start surveillance. Focus on the Haven Ranch area. Don't let anyone know the Markham case has been reopened. In the following week, Lopez coordinated with the DPS Technical Support Unit to survey the over 50-acre Haven Ranch property using drones and satellite imagery. The collected data displayed on the screen: rows of horse stables, wooden cabins, red dirt trails, and a fenced-off area in the back that didn't appear on public maps. She zoomed in on the frame. In the middle of the fenced area was a flat square patch of ground with faint rectangular depressions, about 6 × 3 meters in size, like remnants of an old foundation or something once buried deep. It could be a water cistern or a building foundation, the technician commented. But Lopez shook her head. No, this area is too far from the main buildings. And look at how the soil is compacted, like it was tamped down after digging. She requested thermal imaging analysis. The results showed on the heat map that section of ground was noticeably cooler than the surrounding area, a sign of metal objects underneath retaining heat differently. The next day, Lopez contacted the DPS Geotechnical Unit and borrowed ground-penetrating radar (GPR) equipment, ground-penetrating radar used to survey subsurface structures. That evening, she arrived at the Tucson outskirts with 2 technicians, using a low-flying drone to avoid drawing attention. Under infrared light, Haven Ranch lay silent, with only a few dim lights flickering from the stable row. The drone circled the suspicious ground, sending back a steady stream of signals to the central screen. When the radar waves reflected back, the graph displayed a large metal mass, box-shaped, at about 1.5 meters deep, roughly the size of a car frame. Could be a tank or a buried vehicle, the technician said. Lopez stared at the graph, her hand clenching. 36 years, and the clue about the red Cadillac had finally surfaced. She immediately drafted an urgent report requesting a search warrant. In the application submitted to the Pima County Court, Lopez presented, results confirm the 1978 Cadillac DeVille owner as Howard Fenton, registration not canceled. 1987 Kodak photo shows vehicle matching characteristics appearing near the disappearance scene. Ground-penetrating radar detects large metal objects suspected to be a buried vehicle on Haven Ranch grounds, where Fenton is the owner. The court responded faster than expected. A temporary search warrant was issued within 24 hours, with the condition to be executed in coordination with the FBI Tucson field office to ensure safety and proper evidence collection. That evening, Lopez sat alone in the cold case unit office. Dim light shone on the Kodak photo pinned to the whiteboard, 3 kids beaming with smiles, the red car still visible in the distant corner. Below the photo, she wrote in red pen, Haven Ranch, Tucson. GPR confirms large metal object, likelihood 1978 Cadillac DeVille. Outside, Phoenix was drowned in night, city lights casting gold onto the sky. In the small room, Lopez gathered her files, slipping them into a leather briefcase. She knew tomorrow's trip to Tucson might close a circle that had never been complete, where a man once seen as a kindly teacher now became the focus of the biggest investigation the cold case unit had ever reopened. Before leaving the office, she paused at the board, her eyes landing on Ramirez's old note she'd repinned from the 1987 file, Fenton, unverified alibi. Lopez nodded slightly, murmuring, "This time we'll verify." She turned off the lights, closed the door. Tucson night lay a few hundred miles south, but in that moment, the red glow of the GPR radar seemed to flicker in her mind, a sign of a secret that had lain dormant for 36 years, about to be unearthed from the ground. Tucson night was pitch black, desert wind howling through the dry grasslands. At 11:45 p.m., the FBI and Arizona DPS convoy pulled up outside Haven Ranch for youth. In the darkness, vehicle headlights dimly reflected off the weathered wooden fence. Detective Maria Lopez checked her watch, taking a deep breath. Beside her, FBI Special Agent Tom Walker whispered, "The search warrant is in effect. When I give the signal, we move in." 2 agents in plain clothes knocked on the wooden house door in the middle of the property. Howard Fenton opened it, draped in a robe, his face calm. "What brings you here in the middle of the night?" "We have a search warrant for the Haven Ranch grounds," Walker replied, handing over the court order. Fenton glanced at it quickly, trying to keep his tone even. "This place is full of kids. Hope you don't make a scene." Lopez said quietly, "We just need a few hours." Behind the stables, the technical team had pinpointed the suspicious area, where the ground-penetrating radar (GPR) had detected the metal object. Portable floodlights switched on, illuminating the flat square patch of ground, thick dust rippling in the wind. "Start at the center point," the technician said, staking markers and probing with a shovel. Less than 10 minutes in, the shovel hit something hard. The metallic clang echoed dryly. "Contact," he shouted. Lopez stepped forward, peering down. Beneath the dark soil, the light caught a curved metal frame caked in mud, flecks of deep red paint emerging as it was wiped clean. "Car door frame," the technician confirmed. Lopez signaled to halt, documented with photos, then allowed deeper excavation. As the frame emerged, rusted steel pieces assembled into the shape of a 1978 Cadillac DeVille, the exact model from the file. Everyone froze. Fenton stood at a distance, arms crossed, watching without a hint of fear. "I don't know what you're looking for," he said evenly. "This land used to be an old junkyard, could be from a previous tenant." Lopez replied curtly, "We'll find out soon enough." The forensics team continued the dig. One specialist suddenly called out, "There's something here." Everyone stopped. He brushed away soil, then slowly lifted a small bone fragment, a few inches long. Lopez's face paled. The technician identified it. Child's wrist bone. The air thickened, filled only with the hum of floodlight generators and the wind. The specimen was carefully sealed and labeled, Specimen 1. Digging deeper, they found a few more bone fragments mixed in the damp earth. A meter away, the light caught a mud-caked yellow button, green thread still clinging to the dirt. Beside it was a checkered fabric scrap, the pattern matching the clothing samples from the 3 Markham kids in the 1987 photo. Lopez recognized it immediately, her heart tightening. She ordered the excavation expanded by 2 meters around the area. Beneath the newly dug soil, the car body came into view: door frame, steering wheel, cracked windshield, driver's side door ajar. Inside, amid clumps of dry dirt, a small round object rolled out, a baby tooth. The group went still. Lopez clenched her fists, but her voice remained steady when she spoke. "Collect everything. Number all evidence." Fenton was escorted to the main house for questioning. An FBI agent returned, whispering to Lopez, "He's too calm. Insists he knows nothing. Says the car might have been buried by an old tenant to dodge disposal fees." Dalton, now retired but consulted as an advisor, only shook his head. "I've met his type. The calmer the more dangerous." By 3 a.m., the car frame was winched out of the pit. The VIN was still legible, 3Z47N913, matching the 4KZ913 plate from the file. No more was needed. This was the deep red Cadillac DeVille that vanished in 1987. Lopez bent down, reading the VIN again, then murmured 36 years. The scene log was filed urgently. Discovered red Cadillac DeVille vehicle, VIN matching Markham case. Interior contains bone fragments, checkered fabric, children's clothing button, long-term burial condition. Fenton was required to stay for interrogation. As he was led away, he looked at Lopez, eyes blank. "You won't find anything. It's just an old car," she replied coldly. "And the kids were just a game to you?" Fenton said nothing, only offering a faint smile. As dawn broke, the car was loaded onto a flatbed, tarped, and escorted to the Phoenix Forensics Lab. Bone samples, fabric and soil were sealed in specialized bio bags. Preliminary reports indicated the bones had characteristics of juveniles. Burial time, 35 years. All evidence was assigned new codes. Markham case. Reactivated 2024. On the drive back, Lopez sat in the car, watching dawn light wash over the desert. Golden dust drifted by, reflecting red like the Cadillac's faded paint. Beside her, Dalton said quietly, "Frank Ramirez always believed the car was the key. Now he's right." Lopez nodded, eyes still fixed outside. Behind them Haven Ranch lay quiet, stables silent in the wind, wooden cabins shrouded in morning mist. On the ground where they'd just dug, fresh tire tracks scarred the earth, marking the moment truth began rising from the dust. 36 years buried, and now the Markham case was officially awakened. 2 weeks after the Haven Ranch search, the Phoenix Forensics Lab sent the first results back to the cold case unit. That morning, Detective Maria Lopez opened the red-sealed envelope-coded Markham case. Reactivated 2024. The first line made her hold her breath. DNA sample extracted from wrist bone recovered at Haven Ranch matches Lucas Markham. Disappearance. Victim 1987. After 36 years, the identity of one of the 3 children had finally been confirmed. But right below that line, the report added, second DNA sample detected, female, matches biometric profile of Rita Holman, 62, Haven Ranch employee. Lopez immediately cross-checked personnel records. Rita Holman, thin woman with silver hair, had been farm manager for over 10 years, living in a small house by the south fence. No priors, described by the community as kind and dedicated. She called Supervisor Grant Holloway. "We need to talk to her now." The interrogation took place that afternoon, at the DPS Tucson office. Rita sat across from Lopez, eyes anxious. When Lopez placed the DNA results on the table, she just stared silently, then whispered, "I knew this day would come." According to her statement, Rita was hired by Fenton in early 1990, 3 years after the Markham disappearance. One night, Fenton called her to the stables, saying he needed help burying an old broken-down car. He said he didn't want the kids at the ranch seeing the rusty junk. "I believed him," Rita said, voice trembling. "The hole was already dug. We shoveled dirt, covered the car. I didn't look inside." When Lopez asked if she'd seen anything unusual, she hesitated. "There was a rusty metal smell, and something like rotting meat. But I thought it was animal remains." Lopez placed the evidence photos in front of her, the yellow button, and green checkered fabric scrap. Rita stared, then burst into tears. "I'd seen him throw away fabric like that before," she said. "When I asked, he just said it was old stuff from former students." Holloway ordered continued questioning. Rita recounted that Fenton always seemed kind, respected by everyone at the ranch. He taught the kids to ride horses, talked about faith and forgiveness. No one suspected. Her voice choked. "I helped him without even knowing." When Lopez asked why she hadn't spoken up sooner, Rita replied, "Back then, I just thought I was doing a job. It wasn't until later, when we were digging new stables, that I heard him say, 'Don't let anyone touch the old ground.' I knew something was wrong, but it was too late." That evening, Fenton was summoned for urgent interrogation. He remained calm, denying all accusations, claiming Rita was making it up to dodge responsibility. His attorney immediately filed a motion to contest, allowing Fenton to post bail pending additional DNA testing. Lopez could only request a temporary travel ban. Not wanting to stop, she continued tracing Haven Ranch construction records. In the Tucson City Archives, a technician found blueprints and stable building permits, dated commencement August 1990, exactly 3 years after the Markham disappearance. Blueprint notes specified the rear field area, the Cadillac burial site, as old sunken foundation, to be leveled. Lopez pieced it together: disappearance in 1987, Fenton buying the land in 1989, burying the car, and starting stables in 1990. Everything fit perfectly like a plan. He didn't just hide the bodies, he built over them so no one would ever dig again, she told Holloway. At the forensics lab, supplemental results confirmed, traces of formalin in the mud around the car, a chemical used to preserve animal remains. Lopez understood. Fenton had tried to slow decomposition to erase all DNA traces. Not an impulsive act, she said. This was calculated. The next day, Holloway called an internal briefing. He summarized briefly. Bone DNA matches Lucas Markham. Female DNA matches Rita Holman, confirms her presence during car burial. Stable construction records commence 1990, 3 years after the case. Evidence shows Fenton actively concealed physical evidence. This isn't a missing persons case anymore, Holloway concluded. We're upgrading to premeditated murder investigation. That evening, Lopez returned to the office. On the desk was still the photo of the 3 kids smiling on the Markham porch, enlarged from the Kodak roll. In the distant corner, the deep red car peeked under the sunlight. She placed beside it a photo from the Haven Ranch scene, now just an empty deep pit in the ground. 2 images, 2 moments, but the same car. Before turning off the lights, she wrote the final line in the report. Cadillac buried under Haven Ranch stable foundation, intentional act. Fenton used 1990 construction to conceal crime. Recommend prosecution for first-degree murder. Outside the window, Tucson city lights cast a pale gold. Lopez stood watching for a long time. 36 years after the laughter in the Markham yard, justice was slowly returning, late, but unable to be buried forever under Arizona's red desert soil. After fully confessing to helping Howard Fenton bury the Cadillac in 1990, Rita Holman was placed in the DPS Witness Protection Program. She was housed in a safe house in suburban Tucson, under the watch of 2 agents. Rita was cooperative, but always fearful, often keeping the curtains drawn all day, and waking up in the middle of the night because she heard someone outside. 2 days later, early Monday morning, Lopez received an urgent call from the monitoring center. Rita had vanished during the night. The back door had been unlocked with a key, and the hallway camera lost signal from 1:13 to 1:27 a.m., right when she left her room. Police found a cold teacup on the table, and an open Bible to the page. The truth shall set you free. There were no signs of a struggle or a note. When checking the exterior security system, the tech team spotted footage of a man in a dark jacket and baseball cap walking around the property at 1:05 a.m., pausing near Rita's window, then disappearing just before the camera cut out. He never returned. Lopez, along with FBI agent Tom Walker, organized a search within a 1-mile radius of the area, but found nothing. Rita had vanished into thin air. Fenton, when questioned during his morning interrogation that same day, just shrugged. I heard she was paranoid. Maybe she just left on her own. His lawyer immediately demanded the questioning stop. Lopez looked at him and said curtly, if she didn't leave on her own, you'll have to explain why. By the 3rd day, a maintenance worker at Haven Ranch called in about a strange smell around the old shed behind the stables, an area that had once been cordoned off. When the investigative team arrived, they found freshly disturbed soil. After a few shovelfuls, Rita Holman's body was discovered, wrapped in plastic sheeting, with ligature marks on her neck and her hands bound. There were no signs of strong resistance, indicating the victim had been subdued suddenly. Lopez stood watching the scene, desert wind blowing golden dust over the plastic sheet. The woman who had helped reopen the Markham case had now become a victim of the very man she had once feared. The forensics team carefully collected samples, gray hairs, human skin traces on the binding rope. The samples were rushed to the Phoenix Forensics Lab. 24 hours later, the DNA results came back. The male DNA on the binding rope matches Howard E. Fenton 100%. The entire cold case unit fell silent. Supervisor Holloway gripped the report tightly, his voice hoarse. No doubt anymore. He silenced his accomplice. Lopez just bowed her head, looking at Rita's photo in the file. She knew too much, she said softly. Police immediately returned to Haven Ranch. Fenton was arrested right at the main house, as he was preparing to leave. He didn't resist, just smirked. You guys again. How many years has it been? and you still have no proof I killed anyone." Lopez handed him the arrest warrant and replied coldly, "Now we do." In the interrogation room, Fenton maintained his composure. "I was set up," he said. "She had a key. She could have gone there herself." Lopez looked him straight in the eye. "Key or no key, your DNA is still on the binding rope. She died on your property, 30 meters from that car. How's that for coincidence?" Fenton didn't respond, just gave a faint smile. "You still haven't found the other 2 kids." When the forensics team combed the site a second time, they discovered tire tracks from a small truck around the shed, the exact type Fenton often drove. Inside the cab, there were a few gray hairs matching Rita's DNA, and wear marks from rope in the bed. It all reinforced the theory: he killed Rita to silence her. That afternoon, the press was flooded with news: Markham case witness murdered. Prime suspect is Haven Ranch owner. The public was stunned. The man once seen as a compassionate mentor had his mask ripped off. TV news broadcast non-stop footage of police cordoning off Haven Ranch, forensics vans lined up departing amid the red desert dust. In the internal briefing, Holloway summed it up briefly: Rita Holman's body found within Haven Ranch grounds. DNA on binding rope matches Fenton. Evidence shows Fenton accessed the scene and had motive to silence her. Recommend charging with first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. Lopez wrote the final note in the report: victim Rita Holman, cause, strangulation. Suspect Howard Fenton, motive silencing a witness. That night, she sat alone in her office, the lights of Tucson City reflecting on the window. On the desk were 2 photos side by side: Lucas Markham, the child missing since 1987, and Rita Holman, the woman who dared to speak the truth but had to die for it. Lopez closed the file, thinking to herself, Fenton was no longer just a suspect, he was a serial killer who had lived for 30 years on everyone's trust. Outside, the desert wind howled through, stretching long like the breath of a land that had buried sins too long, until the truth was finally dug up alongside Rita Holman's death. 2 weeks after Rita Holman's body was discovered, the official confrontation between Detective Maria Lopez and Howard Fenton took place at the Arizona DPS headquarters in Tucson. The room was brightly lit and cold, the table piled with files, crime scene photos, and evidence. Lopez sat ramrod straight, facing Fenton, now in an orange prison jumpsuit, wrist cuffed, his calm demeanor unnervingly composed. "Howard Fenton," she began, "we've completed the chain of evidence in the 1987 disappearance of the 3 Markham siblings." She methodically placed each file on the table: DNA from the bones matching Lucas Markham, the plaid fabric and shirt button found in his Cadillac, the 1990 permit for building the Haven Ranch stables, and finally, the DNA report from the rope binding Rita Holman, where Fenton's own genetic markers were detected. She spoke slowly: "You owned the dark red Cadillac DeVille, license 4KZ913. The car was buried under the stable foundation 3 years after the disappearance. DNA in the car matches the victims, DNA on the binding rope matches you. Every trail leads back to Haven Ranch, and straight to you." Fenton leaned back, his voice mocking, "You can spin a good story, but no one saw me kill anyone." "We don't need to see," Lopez replied. "Science speaks for itself." She turned on a screen displaying the DNA sequence, pointing to each matching segment between the car samples, the rope, and Fenton's genetic profile. "It's a perfect match across the board." On top of that, she slid another paper toward him. "Mud analysis from the car pit shows formalin, the exact chemical your company, Fenton Chemical Solutions, imported in 1990. You used it to slow decomposition and erase DNA traces." Fenton glanced at it briefly, smirking faintly. "Arizona soil has thousands of things in it, could be coincidence." Lopez snapped the file shut and said curtly, "Nothing's coincidental when the woman who helped you bury that car gets strangled with rope bearing your DNA." Silence stretched. Lopez stood and read the indictment aloud. "Howard E. Fenton is charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping of a minor, and child endangerment. The official arrest warrant has been approved by the court." Two FBI agents entered, cuffing Fenton's hands. He remained composed, his eyes cold. 36 years, and you think justice still means anything? It does, Lopez replied, because it finally arrived. Right after the Arizona State Attorney's Office held a press conference announcing the arrest, images of the exhumed Cadillac, the 1987 Kodak photo, and Fenton's portrait flooded all media. The DPS spokesperson declared, the 1987 Markham disappearance case is officially solved. Suspect Howard Fenton faces 3 of the most serious charges under Arizona state law. The news sent shockwaves. Tucson residents were horrified to learn that the founder of Haven Ranch, the ranch once praised as a rehabilitation center for troubled youth, was the killer of his own former students. The press dubbed the case, the crime buried under the desert. In the cold case unit office, Lopez watched the press conference on screen. Supervisor Grant Holloway said quietly, "You finished what Ramirez started." Lopez replied, "No, I just picked up the path he didn't get to complete." She looked at an old photo of Deputy Ramirez, where he'd scribbled a 1988 note, "Fenton, unverified alibi." That evening, Lopez flew to Tucson to sign the paperwork transferring Fenton to Pima County Jail. As she walked the hallway, she came face to face with him being escorted to the transport van. Fenton looked at her, his eyes half challenging, half empty. "I'm not afraid of prison, I'm afraid of being forgotten." Lopez replied, "You won't be forgotten. Your name will be tied to the crimes forever." The prison van left the headquarters, amid the flashbulbs of dozens of reporters. The news spread across America. Arizona 1987 cold case solved. Arrest shocks community. The Markham family, now living in Flagstaff, sent a thank you letter to the cold case unit. In it, Evie Markham wrote, "Thank you for not letting my 3 children be buried in silence." That night, Lopez returned to the office. On the desk was a row of evidence: the plaid fabric scrap, the yellow shirt button, the Kodak photo, and the DNA results. Beside it was Evie's thank you note, in trembling handwriting. She sat silently for a long time, looking at the evidence like a timeline closing. Outside, desert wind blew through the window, carrying fine red dust. Lopez wrote the final line in the report. July 12, 2024, suspect Howard Fenton officially arrested. After 36 years, the Markham case is closed. She shut the file and turned off the light. In the darkness, the rustle of paper echoed softly like the whisper of justice delayed, but never gone. After Howard Fenton was indicted, the FBI and Arizona DPS Cold Case Unit launched an expanded investigation, combing through all missing child files from 1985, 1992. The hypothesis: the Markham case was just one of many crimes buried around Haven Ranch for youth, which Fenton had run for years. In the FBI office in Tucson, Detective Maria Lopez and the data specialists reviewed thousands of old files and cross-referenced lingering DNA samples in the CODIS system. After 2 weeks of combing, they identified 2 unidentified genetic profiles from 1986 and 1991 disappearances that matched Fenton's DNA. The first case was Jody Pearson, 8 years old, missing from Yuma in 1986 on her way to school. A hair collected from her coat had once gone unidentified. New results showed a 98% match to Fenton's genetic profile. The second was Brian Keller, 9 years old, missing from Kingman in 1991. Skin cell samples on a toy left behind matched 96%. Both children had attended Haven Ranch summer programs. "It can't be coincidence," Lopez said in the team meeting. He opened the ranch to select victims. The FBI returned to Haven Ranch for the 3rd time. After removing wooden panels in the old shed, they discovered a small room welded shut, just a few square meters. Inside, it was empty, except for a faded child's blanket and a few rusty coat hooks. On the wall was a white painted letter "OL." Lopez stood frozen. That could have been a temporary holding cell for the kids. Haven Ranch personnel records also showed that from 1988 to 1992, Fenton had taken in 8 summer intern students, but only 6 were later identified. The remaining 2 names, Jody Pearson and Brian Keller. Supervisor Grant Holloway presented the report to the Arizona State Attorney's Office. However, only the Markham case had enough evidence for criminal prosecution. The other 2 lacked bodies, witnesses, and direct proof. Prosecutor Elena Rios was clear: there are signs of serial offending, but only Markham has the legal elements to go to trial. In the FBI meeting, Lopez presented the summary: 2 DNA samples, Yuma 1986, Kingman 1991 match Fenton 96, 98%. Both victims had been to Haven Ranch. Old shed structure shows signs of human confinement. Off-the-books operations accepting undocumented kids. The FBI went further. Fenton exploited the Youth Rehabilitation Ranch banner to recruit children from single-parent or low-income families, then kept some special ones for his own purposes. No one suspected, as Haven Ranch was once hailed as a community model. Lopez read the report, her heart heavy. 30 years ago, he was praised as a dedicated mentor, while children vanished right under his watch. She said softly to Holloway, "If Rita were still alive, we'd have a witness." He nodded. "Now it's just physical evidence, and it has to be ironclad so no one can deny it." The investigative team continued interviewing former ranch staff. An ex-driver admitted to transporting 2 strange kids from Tucson to Prescott in 1990, matching the time Fenton built the stables. A kitchen worker recalled seeing Fenton lock the shed door every night, with no one allowed near. The stories were scattered, but all pointed to one thing: Haven Ranch wasn't rehabilitation, it was captivity. Holloway's summary report to the Department of Justice stated clearly, there is basis to believe Haven Ranch was a site for illegal child confinement and exploitation, operating under the guise of an educational facility. However, beyond the Markham case, there is currently insufficient evidence for additional indictments. That evening, Lopez sat alone in the office, an Arizona map spread before her. Red pins marking disappearances formed a curving line from Prescott Valley down to Tucson. She added 2 blue dots, Yuma and Kingman, then stared for a long time. "Every road leads back to Haven Ranch," she whispered. Office light cast on Lopez's tired but resolute face. She knew the Markham case was just the beginning. Fenton might only be convicted on 1 count, but for her, the mission wasn't over. There were other children, other names still unfound, and they deserved justice's call, no matter how many years had passed under Arizona's red sands. In May 2025, the Pima County Superior Court in Arizona opened the most anticipated trial in over 3 decades, State of Arizona versus Howard E. Fenton. The courtroom was packed, national media flocking to Tucson. Residents, former Haven Ranch students, and the Markham family were all present. 3 empty seats in the front row bore nameplates: Lucas, Daniel, and Peter Markham. Lead prosecutor Elena Rios stepped to the podium, her voice clear. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not just a murder case. This is a crime buried for 37 years, and today, the truth has finally risen from the ground of Haven Ranch." Before her was a chain of evidence, laid out in chronological order: a 1987 Kodak photo of 3 children, with the red Cadillac in the distance, DNA results matching Lucas Markham, Rita Holman's final recorded testimony, and the 1990 Haven Ranch stable construction records, where the car had been buried under the foundation. The prosecution built the entire story. Fenton, an elementary school teacher, knew the 3 Markham brothers. In 1987, he lured the boys to the old Haven Ranch property under the pretense of summer help. After the boys disappeared, Fenton sold his house, bought the Haven Ranch land, and 3 years later, built the stables right over the burial site to cover it up. In 2024, the cold case unit discovered the Cadillac and identified DNA matching Lucas. Rita Holman, the sole witness, admitted to helping him bury the car and was later murdered. With Fenton's DNA on the ligatures, Rita's recorded testimony was played in court. Her voice trembled. "He told me to help bury the car. I thought it was old junk. I didn't know there were kids in it. The prosecution closed with images of the crime scene. The rusted red car frame excavated from the desert, a checkered cloth scrap and yellow shirt button placed beside it. No one in the room made a sound. When it was their turn, defense attorney Derek Hall, a renowned cold case specialist, stood to counterattack. He declared the prosecution had only a chain of hypotheses and random coincidences. His key point was the alibi, an old photo showing Fenton in California, in June 1987, at the time of the boy's disappearance. Hall projected the photo, Fenton standing by a San Diego Fair 1,987 inches sign, smiling with a few friends. He said, "Your Honor, on June 21, 1987, Mr. Fenton could not have been in Prescott Valley. He was in California, over 400 miles away. This is the original photo, verified by a living witness." Some in the room murmured. Lopez sat in the back row, her eyes fixed on the screen. She noticed the light in the photo looked off, not the summer sun of 1987. After the recess, she conferred with Prosecutor Rios and requested court permission for supplemental technical analysis. The next morning, Rios called Lopez to the witness stand. "Detective Lopez," she asked, "have you examined the photo presented by the defense?" "Yes." "What did you notice?" Lopez opened her laptop and projected a zoomed-in image. "This photo contains digital metadata, date information embedded in the scanned file. According to the FBI Technical Lab's analysis, the data shows, original date August 15, 1992. The room gasped. Attorney Hall objected, "This is just a scanning error." Lopez calmly replied, "No, metadata can't appear in the original Kodak film, unless the photo was reshot digitally. That means the 1987 original doesn't exist. The shooter used old film, then reprinted it in 1992, and added a fake caption." Rios followed up, "So the defendant's alibi evidence is a fake photo, correct? Moreover, the billboard in the photo advertises the Bonnie Raitt Tour, 1992. It couldn't exist in 1987. The jury scribbled notes furiously. Attorney Hall fell silent, sweat beading on his brow. Fenton remained composed, only muttering softly, "She's smarter than I thought." The prosecution wrapped rebuttal with a final argument. The defendant lived 30 years as a good man, but only to cover a crime. He killed 3 innocent children, hid their bodies in his own car, murdered his accomplice to silence her, and fabricated evidence to escape justice. No conscience can call that innocent. The jury was sent to deliberate. The courtroom fell deathly silent. In the hallway, Evie Markham sat beside Lopez, hands clasped tightly. "Do you think they'll convict?" she asked. Lopez whispered, "They've seen enough." After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The foreman stood and read the verdict. On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty. On the charge of child kidnapping, guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty. Gasps rippled through the room. Fenton said nothing, just stared at his cuffed hands. Evie Markham bowed her head, tears streaming. Lopez stood still, feeling as if 37 years of weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. The judge pronounced sentence, Howard E. Fenton is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, plus 70 years for the additional charges. The sentence is effective immediately. The press called it, the verdict that closed Arizona's longest cold case. Thousands watched live on television. Outside the courthouse, the DPS spokesperson stated, "Justice delayed is not justice denied." That afternoon, as Fenton was escorted from the courthouse, Tucson's sun beat down on his face, reflecting off the prisoner transport van's windows. He turned his head, eyes vacant. Lopez watched, not triumphant, just hollow because every conviction came at the cost of lives lost. That evening, Lopez returned to the cold case unit office. On her desk, she placed 3 photos, Lucas, Daniel, and Peter Markham. Beside them was Evie's handwritten letter, "Thank you for bringing us home." She gazed long at the old Kodak photo, where faded sunlight lit 3 innocent smiling faces. Beneath the frame, she added a small pencil note, 37 years, justice delivered. Outside, the Arizona desert sank into quiet night. But in the small room, Lopez's desk lamp stayed on, like a flame, reminding that sometimes, justice doesn't vanish. It just waits for the right person to call its name. In June 2025, Howard E. Fenton, former teacher and Haven Ranch director, was sentenced to life without parole, plus 70 years for murder, kidnapping, and child endangerment charges. The court denied all appeals. After 37 years, the Markham case officially closed. The courtroom was jammed, reporters crowding the aisles. Outside, residents held signs reading, "Justice for the Markham brothers." As the judge finished reading the sentence, Evie Markham collapsed in sobs. Lopez stood behind her, watching silently. The courtroom lights cast down on Fenton's cuffed hands, the cold gleam of metal, the end of a dark chapter in Arizona. A week later, the cold case unit finalized the summary report. On the first page, Lopez titled it, Case #87MK421, Final Report. The report detailed 43 witnesses interviewed, 14 DNA samples analyzed, including 7 matching victims and suspects. 3 victims identified, Lucas, Daniel, and Peter Markham. 1 accomplice, Rita Holman, murdered to silence her. In the conclusion, Lopez wrote, DNA technology not only recovers evidence, but restores voices to the dead. No crime is ever truly buried. The report was sent to the State Attorney General's office and archived at the DPS Phoenix Records Vault as a model for cold case investigations. Meanwhile, Fenton was imprisoned at Florence Prison, isolated for security. He refused media interviews, only agreeing to a brief statement to the Arizona Chronicle reporter, "I never killed anyone. I just helped those kids find peace." The chilling words outraged the public. On transfer day, Lopez and the FBI team were present at the prison yard. As he boarded the transport van, Fenton turned to her, voice even, "Do you believe they all died?" Lopez froze. "What did you say?" Fenton smiled, "Not all of them, detective." Then he bowed his head and stepped into the van. The iron door slammed shut, leaving Lopez in the blazing yard. That vague statement echoed in her mind all night. Back at the office, she reviewed the Haven Ranch files. Amid dozens of documents, she paused at the forensics report. Female hair sample recovered from storage shed, not matching Fenton, Rita, or Markham victims. Marginal note, sample owner, female, 10, 12 years old, unidentified. Lopez stared at the line, recalling Fenton's words. Not all of them. She opened her computer, accessed the National DNA database, and entered the unmatched sample data. Beside her, Supervisor Holloway entered. "You still think someone survived?" "Don't know," Lopez replied, "but if there's even a slim chance, I have to be sure." Holloway pondered, "The Markham case is closed, but Haven Ranch might not be." Lopez added a final note to the report. "One unidentified female DNA sample requires comparison to National Missing Children database." She submitted the official request to the FBI. The screen displayed, "Processing, estimated 72 hours." That night, Tucson was quiet. Lopez sat alone, gazing at the photo of the 3 Markham brothers on her desk, next to Evie's handwritten thank you letter. "Thank you for returning justice." She smiled faintly. Justice had come, but not fully. At midnight, the computer screen lit up. The FBI system sent a notification, "Match found. Partial DNA similarity detected." Lopez stared at the text, heart pounding. Fenton's words echoed again, "Not all of them." Outside, the dim light reflected the office nameplate. Cold Case Unit, Arizona DPS. In the cold blue glow, Maria Lopez understood, the Markham case was over, but the search for truth hadn't stopped, because perhaps one of the children had never died. A month after Howard Fenton's sentencing, Tucson entered a scorching summer. The desert baked dry, red dust winds whipping along Interstate 10. In the cold case unit office, Detective Maria Lopez sat amid stacks of unresolved files, computer light reflecting on her weary face. The Markham case had closed, but Fenton's final words, "Not all of them, detective," still haunted her. On Monday morning, The intake clerk handed her a plain brown envelope, no sender listed, just addressed, for Detective Lopez. Personal. The postmark was from Flagstaff, where the Markham family once lived. Lopez used a letter opener, carefully slicing it open. Inside was an old Polaroid photo, and a small folded note. The photo stopped her cold. It showed a boy about 9 years old, standing in a sandy yard, a familiar wooden fence of Haven Ranch behind him. He wore a green plaid shirt, blonde hair, bright gray-blue eyes, the face identical to Noah Markham, Lucas's twin, presumed dead with his brothers in 1987. But the files only confirmed 3 children, no Noah. Lopez shivered. She unfolded the accompanying note. The handwriting was scrawled, ink smudged, just a few lines. You never found the 4th boy. No signature, no address, just a faint gray thumbprint in the corner. Lopez set the photo on her desk, pulse racing. She pulled up the electronic Markham file, flipping to the birth records. Lucas, Daniel, Peter, no Noah. But she recalled Evie Markham saying, when her children vanished, she'd lost the world of 4 boys. Back then, everyone thought it a metaphor. Now, this photo made her doubt everything. She called Holloway into the room. He eyed the photo, frowning. Looks real, but why send it now? Could be someone from Haven Ranch in 1991. Lopez replied, or the photographer themselves. And the note? A warning, or a confession. That afternoon, she sent the photo to the Phoenix Forensics Lab. The preliminary report confirmed, Polaroid paper produced circa 1990-1992. Perfectly matching Haven Ranch's operational period. AI facial analysis matched 96% to Lucas Markham's features, but with subtle differences. A straighter nose, a mole shifted to the left cheek. Can't be coincidence, Lopez murmured. This boy could be the 4th. She reopened Rita Holman's notes. In the old testimony, Rita had mentioned a blonde boy who came last, not on the official list. When pressed, she'd said, Mr. Fenton called him a temporary guest. The investigators had dismissed it as faulty memory. Now, every detail clicked like a forgotten link in the chain. That evening, Lopez drove to Evie Markham's home in Flagstaff. The elderly woman looked frailer, her eyes still shadowed but calmer. When Lopez showed her the photo, her hands trembled. She stared for a long time, tears welling. It can't be, this is Noah, she whispered. The boy born minutes after his 3 brothers. When they vanished, his birth certificate got misfiled. No one double-checked, I thought. No one needed to know more. Lopez fell silent. The puzzle pieces snapped into focus. 4 boys, not 3. Fenton had erased a name from the start. Evie choked out the story. Noah loved hiding in the backyard with Lucas. That day, I only saw 3 bikes. I thought they all went together. She gripped Lopez's hand. If he's alive, please find him. That night, Lopez returned to the office, the Polaroid neatly centered on her desk. She opened a new file, assigning cold case hash 2025-013. The title appeared, Possible Survivor, Haven Ranch. Noah Markham. She jotted a summary, photo of unidentified origin, taken at Haven Ranch circa 1991. Boy's face matches 96% of Lucas Markham's features. Accompanying note, you never found the 4th boy. Hypothesis, a 4th child. Noah Markham may have survived and been taken elsewhere. When finished, she looked out the window. Outside, rare Tucson rain pattered on the glass, reflecting the dim light. Across the desk, the photo of the 3 Markham brothers lay beside Evie's thank you letter. Lopez whispered, maybe there's still a boy out there waiting to be found. She closed the old file, setting it aside. Her hand brushed the new photo, the boy's innocent smile, eyes seeming to look straight at her, as if saying something. A mix of chill and hope crept into Lopez's heart. Holloway entered, glanced at the photo, and said softly, you sure you want to open a new case? Lopez nodded. If a child's alive, I won't stop. He smiled. Then let's get started again, Lopez. On the screen, she entered the final line, investigation status, active. pending verification. She turned off the lights, leaving only the screen's glow reflecting. Cold case #2025-013. Possible survivor. Outside, desert wind swept through Tucson again. Night blanketed the city, but in Lopez's small office, the light lingered, like an unquenched lamp, ready to illuminate the next path to truth, where the Haven Ranch story hadn't truly ended. The Story, Arizona, 1987. Cold case solved. Arrest shocks community. Is not just a cold case cracked, but a mirror reflecting American life today, where respected people can still exploit system gaps, and where technology plus community persistence can drag truth back to the surface. Remember, 3 very American details. 1. A license plate typo 4KZ913, entered as 4KZ813, derailing the investigation for 36 years. 2. The Kodak photo, meant as alibi proof, exposed by metadata check revealing 1992. 3. Haven Ranch for Youth, an organization sounding noble, hiding a sealed cold room behind the storage shed. Practical lesson: parents need safety check-ins for kids, hourly check-ins. Teach describing location signs, memorizing plates, and don't hesitate to vet youth-serving organizations. Demand background checks, child protection policies. 2. Adult rule: cameras, entry-exit logs. Communities should stay calm but vigilant. A photo, a receipt, a neighbor's memory, can be the piece. Don't dismiss small details. Preserve evidence properly. No bare hands. Clear context shots. Report through official hotlines, and request receipt numbers. On the personal side, boost digital savvy. Learn basic EXIF metadata checks. Spot rescanned versus original photos. Know GPR, DNA, CODIS are strongest, with voluntary community tips. And if you're in social work education, proactively transparent, open independent audits, mandatory abuse recognition training. Finally, Maria Lopez's tenacity reminds us, justice sometimes arrives late, but it demands persistence, courage to speak truth like Rita Holman, and a community that doesn't let go, so no fourth child is ever forgotten. Thanks for following the journey to reclaim justice for the 3 Markham brothers. If you believe truth always finds a way to surface, hit subscribe to join us, exploring more unsolved cold cases. See you in the next video, where another photo might unlock a new mystery, and perhaps the clue to the 4th child.